Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video I'm going to run through how you'd use Git in your labs to clone a repository, do some work, and then commit your changes and push them back up to Git Lab. Okay, let's go to our lab instructions. So in lab 1 it was exercise 4 where it tells you to use Git. So in all of our labs this process is going to be mostly the same. So in this video I'm not going to go too in depth into how Git works. I'm just going to show you the minimum number of things that you need to know in order to do your labs. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is open up the lab template. This will take you to GitLab, and you can sign in here with your uni ID and password. Okay, there we go, I've signed in. Now, the next thing we need to do is fork the lab, because what we're currently looking at right now is the master lab template. So, I know a lot of you have accidentally done this. If you clone here without forking, you won't be able to push your work back to GitLab. Now the reason why you can't do that is because this is the master template and you aren't allowed to make changes to it for obvious reasons. So what we're going to do is click the fork button here to make our own copy of the template on the GitLab server. So now we have our own little copy that we can work with and save and push our changes to. Okay, so before I click the clone button, I'm going to make extra sure that this is my fork and not the master template. So if I look up here, I can see that it's my name here, followed by the lab. And if I look in the URL bar, I can see it's my uni ID. Now, I'll go back to the template for a moment. If I'm looking at the template, it'll say engineering 2219 here, and it'll say engineering 2219 in the URL bar. So if you see this, you need to click the fork button. Okay, so now we're in our fork, which is our own copy of the master template on the GitLab server. What we're going to want to do now is press the clone button. So there's two links here, and you'll want to use the second one. So the top link, you need to have some special files on your computer, which I will cover in a later video, but for now we want clone with HTTPS. Okay, now we've done this, we want to open up our terminal. Here we are. Okay. Now, the command that we need to use here is git clone. So, what git clone does is clone our Git repository and put a copy on our computer. So, let's have a look. So, I'm just going to use terminal commands that you should remember from our previous video. So, I'm currently in my home folder, as indicated by the squiggle. And what I'm going to do now is git clone. So we want git clone and then our URL. Now there's a few different ways to paste into the terminal. You can right click and press paste. You can press your middle mouse button, or you can press Control Shift and V. There we go. So what are we actually doing here? We're running the git program and we're telling it that we want to clone something. And then clone needs to know what it's cloning, so we're giving it a URL. And what this is going to do is put the lab repository in a folder wherever we are right now. Okay, so it'll ask you to log on, put in your uni ID again, and your password. Now, it won't show you your password while you're typing it in, and that's so I can't stand there and steal it from you. But there we go. Okay, so what has that actually done? Let's have a look. As you can see, we now have a folder with our lab in it. If I change into it, you can see that all of our lab files are in here. So let's do the next step, which is to open up Visual Studio Code. Okay, we're now in Visual Studio Code. So something I've noticed a lot of people doing is that you've just been opening your main.s file and not the folder. Now the reason why you need to open the folder is so the extensions all load themselves in and work properly. So let's open our folder. Right. So when you open the folder, what you want to do is click into the top level folder, so just the lab repo there, and then stop here. So don't click on any more stuff. And then just go to the top right and press OK. Give it a second. Oh, I think I already had it open. Just let me open some other folder. Alright. Now I'll open my lab 1 again to show you. Okay, so we click on the folder and then OK at the top right. Wonderful, we're here. Now, our main.s file is always going to be in src, and here it is. Okay, so we can verify that we've correctly opened the folder, because the folder name will be up here, and we can also look down here and see all of our extensions have loaded properly. Now, if you don't have your extension buttons at the bottom of your screen here, then the most likely reason is that you haven't opened the folder correctly. So let's make a few changes. I'll insert a few instructions, say I'll add some registers and then do a no-op. Okay, and now I'll save my work. So let's pretend that I've completed my lab and saved all of my changes. And now I want to do my git push and commit and save all my work. So the way we'll do this, we'll go back to our terminal and I'll open a new terminal. Okay, so a lot of people just open a new terminal and then try to run all of their git commands. So the first command that the lab will tell you to do is a git pull. Now, why has this git pull not worked? Well, if we look at the folder that my terminal is currently in, the squiggle here, or with pwd, I'm currently inside my home folder. Now, if the folder that my terminal in is not the Git repository, Git won't know what to do. So what we'll do is I'll list my folders, then I'll find my lab folder and change into it. Now when I do a git pull, it'll ask me to log in again, which is okay. And it'll say we're already up to date. So what the git pull does is it makes sure that your local version of the repo is up to date with what's on GitLab. So the next step that we want to do is to add our changes. But why do we need to add our changes? Let's find out. So git status is a very handy command, which tells you what's going on in your Git repository. So what do we have here? If you remember before, I modified and saved my main.s file, but it's showing up here in red as a change which is not staged for commit. So what this means is, if I was to do a git commit now, it would not actually save any of the changes I've done to main.s. So the way we make Git actually care about what we've done is by doing git add. And then we'll use -big A to add all of our changes. Because by default, Git won't actually do anything unless you tell it to do it with any of the folders or files that you change. So we'll add all our changes and run the git status command again. Cool. So we've got a new file that Visual Studio Code has generated for us, but more importantly, we have our main.s file with all our work in it. As you can see, it's under changes to be committed. So the next step, actually, just let me check something very quickly. All right. So the next step is to do a git commit. So a git commit is like making a new version of all of the files and folders in our Git repository. So we'll do a git commit. Now, at this point, it's very important that you always do -m and put a message in here. Now, the reason why you need to do this here is that if you forget the -m, you'll most likely find yourself in some strange text editor that you don't know how to use. If this happens, either call your tutor or close your terminal and start again. So let's try and git commit. As you can see, we've had a bit of an error here. Now, as with a lot of errors in the terminal, you can work out what the problem is by reading the error message. So, please tell me who you are. Run this command and this command. So what we're going to do is exactly what the error message tells us to do. Git doesn't know who we are, so we're going to run these two commands to tell it our email and our username. Now, remember our terminal history from before? You can see that these two commands are fairly similar. I'm going to press my up arrow key and then hold backspace till we get back here. Username. There we go. I just saved myself some typing. Right. Now, don't forget, you need to run git commit again because the first time it didn't work because Git didn't know who we were. So I'm going to git commit. There we go. So I've just created a new version of my Git repository And the last step is to push my new version back to the Git Lab server. So we'll do this with git push. This will ask me to log in again. Now, if I've properly worked on my fork and not the master template, the git push will work just like that. Okay. So I hope that's helped you understand the very basic things you need to do in Git. Now, just a short explanation on what is actually happening when we do a Git commit. So normally when you're working on, say, a Word document, if you want to save a copy, if you want to save your work, you'll probably just press the save button. Now, what's wrong with just pressing the save button? Let's say that you make a lot of changes and you press save. Now, if you want to go back to what you had before you made all those changes, well, you can't because you've already saved over them. So what you might want to do instead when you're working on like a long report is go save a copy. So you can keep track of all the different changes you've made, and if you want to go back, you always can because you have all these different copies that you've saved as you've made progress along your document. Now doing a git commit is a similar thing. So when you do a git commit, what it's doing is it's like saving a copy of your work as it is right there. So you can do some things and make a git commit, and then you could even delete that folder and make some other stuff and do a git commit. But because you have done a git commit at each point, you can always go back to how your repository looked at the time you did the git commit. So it basically keeps a full history of all the changes that you've made. So if that wasn't clear, please do ask me in a tutorial if you have me, or ask your other tutor, and they'll be able to help explain it a little further. I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you in the labs. Thank you.